তারপর আমি ওখানে ইউনিভার্সিটি করি, ইউনিভার্সিটি অফ ওয়াটারলুতে, এবং ওখানে আন্ডারগ্রেড করি, মাস্টার্স করি সফটওয়্যার ইঞ্জিনিয়ারিং ডিপার্টমেন্টে। তারপর কানাডাতে ওয়াটারলু থেকে টরন্টোতে মুভ করা হয়, ওখানে কাজ করি এবং এখন গুগলে কাজ করছি অ্যাজ আ ক্লাউড ইনফ্রাস্ট্রাকচার ইঞ্জিনিয়ার। So I mean, for the rest of the presentation, I'll switch to English to present the materials, if that's okay. So first of all, thank you for inviting me for this talk. Um, uh, to be honest, I was in Bangladesh for a very short time, for 3 weeks, but I mean, Tohid Uncle Daki, he invited me to talk because I work in cloud AI in Google Cloud in Toronto. And it's obviously a very, very hot topic that you're all very excited to know about. So I will share my insights into what is happening in that industry regarding ChatGPT, regarding Bard, what is the most current development, and also what is the future of generative AI. So without further ado, let's get into it. One thing I want to mention, first of all, is that this is a voluntary workshop that I'm doing that is offered through my invitation, as I said. And this is not in any way sponsored or hosted by Google directly. So I'm sharing my knowledge as a Googler. Therefore, all the information that I will be presenting to you is publicly available, and it's curated for the experience for Daffodil University teachers and students. So here is a rough agenda for today. Dure, I think, so হয়তো একটু ছোট দেখা যাচ্ছে, but I'll read it out loud. So first of all, we'll talk a bit about the primer on generative AI and large language models, an overview. And then we'll look at what is possible with generative AI and the potentials for it, and what makes it so special compared to other AI tools, AI technology in the past. And then thirdly, we'll look at prompt engineering and prompt tuning, which is one way of creating the best results for generative AI for different purposes. So we'll look a bit into that. And that is a very, very new topic that is, months old. So I'm excited to talk about that very much. Then we'll look at some demo on different, not just ChatGPT and Bard, but also different kinds of generative AI, like image processing, creating creative content like presentation and story writing in an assistive way, how to generate code using generative AI. So we'll look at some exciting examples of how to make the best use of these tools so that you can, explore your imagination of what you can do with it. And lastly, we'll look at some ethical impacts of AI, because it is at the same time very exciting, but also we have to be careful and responsible with it, and why we have to be responsible with it. And finally, we'll be looking at the future of generative AI and how to prepare for it, because it is a very disruptive technology, and we'll discuss more about that. Okay, so this is a slide that I took from my current Google Dex. So this is probably not the first time you've seen this concept, is that many people believe that the AI revolution is going to be similar to the fourth industrial revolution. So in 1784, we had the steam power, which started the industrial revolution, first industrial revolution. Then we had electricity. And in the 1970s, we had IT boom, which created computers. I think that smartphones were in the middle as like a disruptive technology. But a lot of people believe that artificial intelligence today is at a point where it can be the next big thing, where it will impact all of our lives in every way. But it is still at its infancy. And so we'll look at, why that is the case and why it is so disruptive in every single way. Here are some notable quotes from some leaders that you might be aware of. Bill Gates, for example, said, "Generative AI is one of the most exciting and potentially transformative technologies of our time. It has the potential to revolutionize the way we create content, learn, and interact with the world around us. Elon Musk, who has a different kind of approach to technology and AI in general, said generative AI is one of the most powerful technologies that humanity has ever developed. It has the potential to do great good, but it also has the potential to do great harm. And third, actually, is one of my favorite persona in the whole world. His name is Yuval Harari. I don't know if you've read his books, but if you haven't, I highly recommend. He's a historian and sociologist. And he said, generative AI is a technology that could potentially change the world more than anything since the invention of agriculture. Here are some popular options. By the way, I want to mention that the way I've designed this workshop today and our presentation is very interactive in the sense that we'll start by looking at some slides, but mostly I want to show you, some demo of what we can do with it. So we'll actually play with in the tools and in the way that I have experience, so you get to see it from my eyes. So it's not going to be slides. I can tell you that. So here are some of the popular options. You might know some of them, and some of them might be new to you. But I wanted to present to you because I encourage you to try, because almost all of them are available for use. ChatGPT is probably the most common one that everyone knows at this point. It's a chatbot by OpenAI that's powered by large language models. Google Bard is in limited release right now. Google has a different stance on generative AI and large language models. It is currently released in the US and UK, but this year it will be released to the for general use, and it'll be available soon. There's DALL-E 2, which is the image generation from OpenAI. So for example, you can say, give a prompt text of what kind of image, art, diagram, sketch you want, and you can generate images based on generative AI. And once again, we'll look at all of them today. Tome is a way to create presentations and story in an illustrative format for using this technology. So you can say, create a presentation on this topic, and it'll make some presentations for you. I was tempted to do that, to be honest, but I decided to create my own slides. But we will create one on the spot regarding this topic, and you'll see which one is better, mine or the one from Tome. And finally, there's GitHub Copilot, which is the assistive coding for technology from GitHub. It is in enterprise version, so it's not the free version, but what it allows you to do is while you're writing code, it'll help you write code. So autocomplete, documentation, testing. If you want to understand a piece of code that someone else has written, it'll explain code to you in English language, or maybe in other languages too, I haven't checked, but such things. So let's start talking a bit more about what are large language models, because we are all familiar with the specific technologies like ChatGPT and all of this, but what is the technology that powers all of this? And at the base of it, fundamentally, is something called large language models. They are machine learning algorithms that can recognize, predict, and generate human languages. They are pre-trained on petabyte scale text-based data sets with tens and hundreds of billions of parameters. I will explain to you what parameters are. LLMs are normally pre-trained on a large corpus of text, followed by fine-tuning on specific tasks. In here, large corpus of text is a fancy way of saying the entire internet that is publicly available. LLMs are also called large models, and generative AI is the model that can produce content. So there's a few things here, and I want to take a deeper dive on this. What are parameters? You'll see it everywhere, especially now, because every company is creating their own language models, and they say GPT-4, 1 billion parameters. BERT, which is Google's previous model, says 500 million parameters. What does that mean? Parameters are basically a way for, I'm making this easy to understand, but they encapsulate something called features. So human language, for example, when we talk, like in the first line, you see, it's raining cats and dogs. What are cats and dogs? They're animals, right? They're animals, they're nouns. It's raining. What is raining? It's something that happens. These are all features, so you can think of them all as parameters. So when large language models learn a language, they understand these concepts. What is an animal? What is a verb? What is food? What do we do with food? Paris is to France as Tokyo is to Japan. What is the relationship here? It's not really explicitly mentioned, right? They're both capital cities of a country. But when generative AI languages see this line, they know that it's a capital city because it has seen in other places what this means. That is a parameter that it has learned. So that's what it means. I wanted to help you understand that because you'll see it everywhere. And it's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's a number. Secondly, what I wanted to highlight is the reason AI is not a new concept. It has existed for at least 2 decades now. And for the last 1 decade, a lot has happened. But why is it that now it is such a big hype and it is making such a disruptive impact? It is because finally AI has learned how to talk like humans. It has learned to understand humans, it has learned to communicate with us in a language that we understand. Before, AI used to be a way to predict and make inferences on data. So you have lots of data, you can make prediction as something as, do you think this object is a cat or a dog? It can predict, right? And it has to go through lots of training. And if you want to train something to do something specific, it takes a lot of expertise. But now my grandma can do it. She can ask a large language model whether, a picture is that of a cat or dog, and it'll say in her language, be it Bangla or Burmese or Chinese, it doesn't matter. It'll communicate with her in the language that she understands. What it has done is it has unlocked the potential for unstructured data. All the data that is available, we could not easily use it before, but now anybody can use it. And you don't have to be an ML expert or a software engineer to do that. That's the beauty of it. Why are large language models different? 2 main things: context and emergent abilities. What does it mean? Emergent abilities mean when we train large language models certain things, it learns new things to do on its own. We don't have to specifically teach it to do certain things. For example, and this was from a talk that was actually by Sundar Pichai, who was the CEO of Google, literally yesterday. You should watch it. I'll mention it at the end. And recently, Bard has learned to communicate fluently in Bangla. Literally, not even a coincidence that it happened with today. And it was not taught specifically to communicate in Bangla in any form. And we'll actually use, we'll use it in ChatGPT, but we'll write some poems in Bangla today. So I'm excited for that. But that's what I mean. That's an emergent ability. But that's interesting because we don't understand how it picks up those new abilities. We just know that it does. So a very happening area of AI is understanding our AI models to understand what they learn and how. Another thing is context. LLMs contextually understand human language and changes how we interact with data in intelligent systems, like I was mentioning. So let's look at it over here. This lady is asking, give me an itinerary for Nepal. And the chatbot says, sure, here's a seven-day plan. So notice, she says, give me an itinerary for Nepal, and it assumes that it makes a 7-day plan. Why? Because it's learned from the internet that maybe that's the most common itinerary for Nepal or something like that. And then she says, make it a family-friendly trip. The important here is context. You can, with Google search or search before, you could not have a conversation with it. You have to ask a big question. You have to go through thousands of links to find that answer you're looking for. But with language models, you can ask a base question and you can have a conversation to get the answer you want. And when she says it's to make it a family-friendly trip, the AI can say, here's an itinerary with easy transportation and planning. because it understands from the internet and lots of data that a family trip needs to be easy logistically to manage. And then finally she says, okay, thank you, present it in a table format. And the bot takes the data that it gave in whatever format, like a list or document or something, and makes a nice table with all the columns and rows in a way that's easy to understand. And it can be presented in other format also. Once again, the fact that it can do that, it can take a block of text and make it into a table, that's possible through hundreds and thousands of features, right? Because all you need to say is to make a table, and it identifies activities, dates, hotels, everything, and it just makes a table for you. And we'll do this very use case very soon, live, for a family trip that we planned literally last week. So it'll be, we'll experience something that I experienced recently. And LLMs can find patterns and connections in massive data corpora, which is another way of saying, so the ChatGPT and these public models, chatbot models, are trained on the entire internet. But it can be trained to do very specific things really well. And we'll talk about that more. That is not public data. So finally, we've talked about large language models, but what is generative AI? Generative AI is something, a subset or something specific to large language models, because LLMs allow them to understand humans, but what do you do with it? You can make images with it, you can make video, you can make songs, and that's where generative AI comes in. And this is powered by an area of machine learning called deep learning. If you don't know much about deep learning, I don't want to get into it, but it's a very subset of machine learning that's powered by neural networks, which in a very broad overview is designed after how our human brain works. Is made with layers and neurons that capture information in the structure that they have. It is a type of artificial intelligence that can create new data, such as text, images, audio, and video, similar to the data that it was trained on. It can also learn to do new things called emergent abilities. The reason I want to mention this is because normally this is a chapter on its own, in the sense that if AI practitioners, computer scientists want to specialize on generative AI, they need to have expertise on deep learning, how to create models, how to define models. How do you instruct a model to do one particular task really well? And that's a topic we won't get into today, but that's why I want to mention it, so that you know, if you want to be more knowledgeable about this topic, this is the area that you're looking at. Okay, so now we'll get into more of the possibilities and use cases for generative AI. Here are some very broad topics: content creation, coding, enterprise, consumer. In content creation, we can write poems, stories, and articles. We can write summaries of texts. Let's say we don't have to write, we shouldn't need to write executive summaries anymore for our bosses. Just send them the document and they can just run it with ChatGPT or whatever, and they can get the summary in however many words they want. Coding. It can write code, explain code. It can help us simplify code. It can write test cases for us so that we know our code runs reliably. It can also help in translating, so that if you're, let's say, new to Python or Java and you don't understand what you're looking at, you can give this code to large language models. It'll understand the code and it'll tell you what it's doing. So it's a assistive way to learn. In enterprise, it's used for data cleanup, support interactions, for example, conversation AI bots, like in call centers. That's the word I'm looking for. In call center AI, you can have conversations that before used to be very, very annoying. Now with large language models, they can be done very efficiently. In consumer, this is my favorite, because this is something that we can all relate to. We can do interview prep. For example, for coding interviews, We can see what kind of questions are there, and we can get solutions right off the bat when we don't know. We can do tutorials and how-tos. The way I read books now, and I can read books that I could not read before because I was foreign. Let's say I'm trying to read a book on philosophy, which I don't know much about. But I read a chapter and I give to some LLM what I don't understand, and it explains it to me like I'm a high school student. And that is beautiful because in some ways, it makes the lives of teachers easier, right? Travel itineraries, we'll look at that. But you can make travel itineraries for many things. You can make recipes. We'll look at that one too. How you can ask for a recipe. You can in fact make recipes based on your favorite cooks and chefs. You can make workout routines. The sky is the limit. You can, if you can imagine something, you can probably do it. So it's really, it doesn't do justice to show this here. This is made to show you like what's possible, and you can explore a lot more. This is an important slide because this shows why LLMs suddenly has burst into the scene and made this so much easier. With traditional machine learning, we need lots of examples for training. You need to, after you train them, in order to train them, you need lots of expertise so that the people who know how to make any use of them are very specialized. You don't need that anymore because the way these models are trained is on vast quote unquote corpora, and you can use them for anything you want. You don't need to be an expert. They used to be very compute intensive. Now they're just trained once and they're ready to go, and they're updated every often, not all the time. Focus on loss functions. Traditionally, so this is a bit particular, but before, machine learning models are trained to do one very particular stuff of function. Like for example, there'd be a machine learning model to distinguish dogs and cats. Now it can distinguish any animal in the world, and even dogs and fishes if you want. And that's why there is prompt design, and we'll look at that more on how to make these very big large language models behave in the way that you want. Okay, so now it's the fun stuff. We'll do a quick demo of an example I've thought of to give you a taste of what I wanted to show. And then now for the rest of the topics, we'll essentially look at a topic and then look at some examples of how how that actually manifests in real life. So let's get into it. So for the first example, since you are all students and faculty members, I wanted to help it write a grant proposal. Okay, what we're trying to do is help write a grant proposal for a PhD student, research student, focusing on ethics of generative AI. I am a researcher in Daffodil International University in Bangladesh, submitting the proposal to NSERC Canada. I'll just pick some arbitrary location, like you need a student, you need some what you're submitting, and you need some identity. So let's see what it gives us. Oh, what happened? Can you all see, by the way? Okay. So let me try to make it bigger. So I don't know, I'm not a faculty member. You're all the experts here, but it's saying, I'm writing to submit a grant proposal. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it'll be project by a PhD student. This will be the structure of the thing. And then the proposed budget, it just makes up some random values, but you can change that because you'd know better. And then it's some in summary, what it's trying to do. Secondly, let's say, you have a good template to write a grant proposal, and now you want to share it with your faculty member colleagues. So what we can do is, so over here for my example, I've chosen my brother Anupam here, or Borno as a student. And it says, help me draft an email to share the proposal with my faculty. Write it in a strong and sorry. So write in a strong and optimistic tone and highlight how bright my student is. Note that it knows what I'm talking about. So it'll write an email for the draft it just gave us. So it says, I'm writing to share with you a grant proposal. Network error. I might have to regenerate this. Right? And it just writes the email for you. And sometimes it will not be 100% what you want, but it's a good starting point. And it makes it so much easier because I don't know about you, but I spend a lot of time just thinking about what to write. When I know what to write, the one line, but it's the 90% that takes much longer. So that's just to give you an example of how I use it. I use it to do a lot of writing. Okay, let's get back to the slide. So now we'll talk a bit about like prompt engineering and prompt tuning. So what is a prompt? Prompt engineering is a process of designing specific prompts or inputs for generative AI models in order to achieve desired outputs. This involves carefully crafting the language and structure of the prompt to guide the model towards generating the desired content. So for this example, I wanted to use one of my favorite. Growing up, during Ramzan, I used to see cook Keka Ferdowsi. She's a cook, and she was quite the character. So I wanted to see if I can create a recipe with her. So in the prompt, I give some context that you being the chatbot, are Keka Ferdowsi, I am a newlywed learning how to cook for the first time. And I, as the user, and this is how we write it in the chatbot. Give me a recipe I can make for my in-laws for Eid. Let's see what it does. So it says, hello, congratulations on your marriage and Eid Mubarak. What is the recipe again? Okay, suggesting a chicken biryani recipe. I don't know if it's actually one of her recipes or not, but I'm sure there's some element of it in there. But the reason it's a prompt is because, first of all, it'll try to pick a recipe that she typically creates on the internet and she publish. And then since I mentioned that I am new to cooking, it'll try to choose a recipe that is easy to make. That's what a prompt is. A prompt is a way to give it some guidance, and then you tell it what you want. And that's actually a structure in which you can write to generative AI models. Not everyone knows this. This is something that's possible to know because from engineers, because this is actually how it thinks. Normally people just write, do blah, blah, blah. But if you give it a prompt and then a user, it performs better on what you want to do. So let's take it a step further. Let's say my mother-in-law has diabetes. So my mother has diabetes, make the recipe appropriate for her. Note that I'm saying that she has diabetes. I'm not mentioning that to create something with less sugar. Actually, this might not work. Okay, let's say I say, because when I tried it, it was with, it gave a dessert. So let's say, I will say my father-in-law has heart disease and how to make it so that it's friendly for that. I said, my father-in-law has heart disease. Update the recipe to be friendly to him. So it has substituted the things with low-fat yogurt, olive oil, and chicken broth. So that's that's an example of prompting. Just wanted to give you an example. Is when you would want is a particular thing, but you give it some suggestions to guide it to the right way and have it in a conversational manner. So let's look a bit more deeply into prompt engineering and prompt tuning because they're a bit two different concepts. So prompt engineering is how you generally guide a conversation, right? So in this case, I gave it an identity that your Keiko Firdousi may give me a recipe for, me who's a new into cooking. And then I say, okay, that's great, but make it friendly for diabetes or heart disease or whatever. And it can do it. In fact, I didn't do this one, but maybe we should do it actually. Let's do the recipe in Bangla so that it translates the whole recipe that it gave us and translates to Bangla. See, it's just trying to write it in Bangla. So now you can maybe share it with your in-laws. Right? So I don't want it to go through the whole thing, but just to give you an idea of what it can do. we should ask it. Can you make this biryani with Maggi noodle with noodles? So look at that. It has substituted the rice with noodles and is giving a recipe. Think about it. Yes, you're right. So So now I want to show you something more specific. And this to me is even more interesting. So prompt tuning is a technique for how you can essentially layer instructions to a generative AI. So basically what you can say is something like, um, you can do personalization. So let's say you say that your cake for this, which is your prompt, number one. And you can say have different recipes, one for your father-in-law who has, heart attack, heart disease, and one for your mother-in-law who has diabetes. And those are specific tuning. So in here, we'll use something specific. This is called a few shot training. The way it works is that you give it some examples and you let it do the one that is remaining. So what I'm trying to do is basically generate Bagdhara. So I say I give it the prompt that you are an idiom generator, which is the English for Bagdhara, for different languages. And then I give it 3 examples. In English, it's raining cats and dogs. In French, avoir le coup de foudre. I actually don't know what it means. Spanish, toma el pelo. I don't know what it means either, but I found them. And let's see, and in the user I say in Bangla. So now we'll see what Bagdhara it gives in Bangla. Let's see. বিদ্যুৎ ঝরছে, সফলতা তোমার হাতে, কথার পরিবর্তে কাজ করা উচিত। I don't know, maybe এগুলা বেশি ভালো বাগধারা না, but it's trying. Right? না, এটা আমি জাস্ট এক্সাম্পল দিয়েছি আর কি, যে এটা হচ্ছে এক্সাম্পল, ইডিয়ম কি, তো বাংলাতে এরকম একটা উদাহরণ দাও। At least that's what I tried, and that's what I was trying to do. But just to give you an idea what is possible, you can generate Bagdhara. You can probably say, what's a good Bagdhara? Can someone give me an idea? Let's try to see if it can guess that. Okalkush. Huh? অমাবস্যার চাঁদ. Okay, how do I describe this? মানে অনেক, okay, অনেক রেয়ার একটা জিনিস, right? Give me a Bangla idiom for something that you see rarely. Give me a Bangla idiom for something that you see rarely. অমাবস্যার চাঁদ নাকি? না, আকাশে তারা দেখা, which is not, it's all right, এটাও ইয়ে, but just to give you an idea what it can do. So prompt tuning applications, I wanted to give you some general idea of what are some techniques, and there's many techniques. So the one we just saw is few shot, which is called giving the model some examples followed by the user input. The examples can capture different features of different results. So for example, in this case, we give different languages. Personalization. Prompt tuning can be used to personalize content for specific users. This, in combination with few shot, can encourage layered prompting with general constraints and personalized results. For example, in the previous example, we said we can make a general one with the different language ones to give it the idea that we are looking for a Bagdhara. And we can say, finally, last one, the personalized one, like, I like, I don't know, for example, the one we used, right? That can be a personalized one. And that's how you can make general applications. for how you can make applications for, let's say, for different things, so that it can act reliably. So then every time you give it an input, you know that it's going to do the right thing. Finally, context. Prompt tuning can generally be used to set more context for accurate results, such as giving roles, document types, audience, etc. We kind of use this. So like for roles, we gave it the role of Keka Ferdowsi. For document type, you can help it create a resume or a draft proposal. For audience, you can make it for, let's say, I gave it the prompt that make it for my faculty members, so it knows how to write the email. This is called prompt tuning. Okay, so now we'll look at some more demos for more use cases. And here we'll look at large language models. We'll look at image generation with DALL-E, and we'll also look at creating presentation with Tome. I think we're going a little bit over. I'll continue, but if you want to leave, it's okay. Sorry for the delay. So the first one I want to show you is how it can generate code. So let's try to see if it can give us some code so that we can use the API that runs ChatGPT. So I said, give me an example code snippet in Python to use the OpenAI chat API. There, it's give you some code. You don't have to look at any documentation or anything. You just ask for what you want, and it gives it to you. And also instructions on how to use it. See, this is the code snippet. And then finally, we can ask it, how do I run this? It went away. But anyways, you get the point. Is you can generate code. And if you want to, let's say, make a web application or something, you can start with whatever you want. It'll give you step by step the code that you need to run to use that whatever use case, and also how to deploy it all the way. It can assist you in your engineering and your creation process. The next one is actually very interesting. So now, as I said, we'll try to write a poem in Bangla with generative AI. So the first one will say, write a poem about extreme heat and climate change. It's writing a poem. And then let's say I want to guide it even further because I want to show you the last one. I think that one's going to be more interesting. Let's write the poem in Bangla. So we say, write it in Bangla. আমি কবিতা আবৃত্তিতে খুব খারাপ। দুনিয়া জ্বলছে তাপমাত্রা চড়ে চড়ে যাচ্ছে পরস্পর, যে তাপমাত্রা আমরা পর্যবেক্ষণ করি না, সে পারে কর ঘাটানো অবস্থা তৈরি। আওয়াজটা মোটা, আবহাওয়া মোটা হয়, সূর্য উজ্জ্বল হয়ে উঠছে। খুব বেশি ভালো লেখেনি। But let's make it more interesting. We can make it write the poem in the style of Rabindranath Tagore. That's gonna be, you know. Right. Write this poem as if you are. So I'm saying write this poem as if you're Rabindranath Tagore. কি আঙ্কেল আপনি কি পড়ে শুনতে চান?
আমি তো এত দূর থেকে দেখবো না, কাছে যাইতে হবে। Let's see. আহ, বিশ্বটা জ্বলছে অত্যাধ আচ্ছা, আমি এই পাশ থেকে জ্বলি। বিশ্বটা জ্বলছে, অত্যাধুনিক তাপমাত্রা হাতে নেই। আবহাওয়ার সারস্য হলুদ, সূর্যোদয় উদ্ভাসিত জ্বলন্তরে। দিন ব্যাপক হয়ে উঠছে রাত, জলবায়ু পরিবর্তন নেওয়া যাচ্ছে সাধারণ থেকে, পারে না কেউ নেই। তাপমাত্রা চড়ছে উপরে, জলবায়ুর সমস্যা হচ্ছে সব জাতির। মৃত জলবিহীন শীতল পর্বতে দুঃখজনক হয়ে নামাচ্ছে আবহাওয়ার মধ্যে। তীব্র উষ্ণতা সব জমি আর নষ্ট করছে মানব জাতির। দুনিয়া সব বদলে যাচ্ছে, সেই পরিবর্তনের সমস্ত ভুল সমাহার হচ্ছে ভারতের। এইটুকু কেবল ইন্ডিয়া আসছে, আর কিছু দেখি নাই। শীতল সৈকতে হিমের বৃষ্টি বাড়িতে থাকিত এখানে কিছুটা মিল পাওয়া গেছে। এখনো মুখোমুখি হয়ে দাঁড়ায় স্থলে, জলবিহীন জল চেয়ে বেড়ায়। আমার দায়িত্ব সে কর্ম যা করে নিজ মানব জাতিকে নাকি মুক্ত করা, জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনের হাত থেকে হয়তো করছে।
এটা রবীন্দ্রনাথ ঠাকুর দেখলে হার্টফুল করবে। But you know, that's what it tries to do. You can give it to prompt it to do things like that. Second thing I wanted to do, as I mentioned, আচ্ছা এখন আমরা যেটা চেষ্টা করবো, আমি বলেছিলাম যে আমরা যে এই প্রেজেন্টেশনটা করলাম সেটা আমরা জেনারেটিভ এআই তে তৈরি করতে পারি কিনা। Okay, so what I'm saying it to do is create a presentation deck to present to a university audience about generative AI, LLM, and prompt engineering, include content for ethical implications of AI, and how to prepare for the future, which is the rough agenda that we have, right? Okay, so it has created a presentation. Let's take a look. The future of AI, generative intelligence, LLM prompt engineering. It roughly gives the outline. Introduction to Gen AI. I think I can use the mouse. Yes. Yeah, so it gives some introduction to generative AI with some pictures that it also generates, by the way. It gives some understanding of LLM. So LLM stands for large language model. It is a technique for natural language processing for on large amounts of data. Oh, sorry. It talks about prompt engineering. It talks about ethical implications of AI. And it's about preparing for the future. So since we haven't covered these two slides yet, let's take a look at these two and see if it matches mine. So ethical implication of AI. As AI becomes more advanced, it raises several ethical concerns. One of the main concerns is bias in AI systems. Since AI models are trained on historical data, they can perpetuate existing biases. Another concern is impact of AI on employment. As AI systems become more capable, they can replace human workers. So anyways, as you can see, this is a tool, for example, that is used for creating presentations. You can just give it a prompt to describe what you want to do, and it'll just create the presentations for you that you can present. You can also create, I don't want to give a walkthrough of it. সেটা actually আমার একটা homework কাজের but yes in the আপনি ভালো প্রশ্ন জিজ্ঞেস করছেন the answer is yes but it has to be a custom model যেমন if you can basically train it so that it knows your style, how you like to make presentation, content, yes, your content, and it can, if you can give it the data for your past presentations and you can say make a presentation on this topic in my style, it'll probably do it. It can probably do it for you. আচ্ছা আমার আরেকটা মানে ডেমনস্ট্রেশন দেখাতে চাচ্ছিলাম but আমরা just we're getting over time, so I can show it or I can go to the final two slides. Which one do you want? দেখাবো আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে. This is the one with the itinerary for my vacation last week. So গত সপ্তাহে আমরা পরিবার মিলে শ্রীলঙ্কা গিয়েছিলাম. So we planned the trip to Sri Lanka with a travel agent. So we said, help us plan a 1-week trip. So she basically sent us this entire email with the whole plan. And as you can see, obviously it has a lot of details, but I want to get a summary of this in table format. So that's easy to see, that when I'm on the go during my travel. So what I want to do is I want to take this, I will copy paste it straight up, like when I edit 9. I will say at the top, so at the top I gave it the prompt and this is the context. And I say, show this itinerary in a table format. Let's see what it does. But it works. Okay, now it's not doing it correctly. 1 second. না কোনো টেবিল বানাইতে পারতেছে না for some reason. But I can show you the what it did. Yeah, let's try that. Create table columns for date, activity, accommodation. Create a table for laboratory. Okay. See, it now works. See, you figured out already. হ্যাঁ বললাম যে from the above table. So see, it took the dates and the activities and where we're staying each night. And it knows which one is an activity, which one is an accommodation. I didn't specify. I just set the category of information and it just does it. Yeah, it works. Sometimes it doesn't work, and then you have to prompt it in the right way. Right. So that's why tuning is important, because then it's more reliable to do a very specific task. That's it. That's all the magic I have. So now we'll look at two final topics: ethics of AI and preparing for the future. Hey, by the way, কারো কোনো প্রশ্ন আছে before we go to the final ones? We can ask questions afterwards also, up to you. Right. So we're talking about how exciting all of this is, but it is also, there's a lot of concerns, and it's important to be responsible. Generative AI can confidently hallucinate, which can encourage misinformation. So it's very important two words: confidently hallucinate. Hallucinate means it can give information that is incorrect and it just makes it up when it doesn't know how to fill up the blanks in a sentence, right? So let's say you ask it, I could have shown it in that example, but if you ask it, give some website links to all of the places we're going to, probably some of them will be real, while some of them will be like some random website link that it just makes up. And that's very dangerous. This will transform the human workforce, and the pace at which society and regulations can adapt to technology is a concern. So as you can see, there's a lot of things that it can do that can change the way human workforces operate, right? And usually society and regulations are behind that. And how do we cope with it? It's not an easy question to ask, but it needs to be kept in mind. There's also philosophical debates about the role of humanity if AI can actually be creative. To be honest, before the start of generative AI, people always thought AI is always, it can do recommendation, search, prediction, etc. But now it can be creative. So, and there's something that people we didn't realize that AI can do. So the question obviously begs, what else it can do with more advances in technology? There's a lot of conversations about whether we should slow down the pace of AI technology. Maybe you have heard in the news where countries like in Europe and also thought leaders have said we should slow down the development of AI because we're not ready for them yet. And there's people on either side of the boat. But I think whether we should slow down or not, it's not for me to ask, but I think there's obviously reason for concern and we should take them very seriously. Finally, preparing for the future. So far we have been seeing, but you have also only seen basically chatbots and stuff like, prompts to create presentations is the only different one you've seen, which maybe you haven't seen before today. But this is only scratching the surface. Chatbots such as ChatGPT and Bard are very, very primitive tools. The gold mine of custom models will truly unlock the potential for unstructured data. So that is the real gold mine of generative AI. Imagine, for example, in legal, if you could train an AI model on the entire legal text of a country and all the history of jurisdictions and verdicts that were made that can be used in court by judges and lawyers to make decisions, so that it's basically aids the justice system. For healthcare, imagine if a doctor had a superpowered AI assistant who tells them about helping them with diagnosis based on all patient data across the world when they're making a decision. And also, they can also check for blind spot. Let's say a doctor makes a diagnosis and they don't realize that there's some case with this patient that they didn't know about. And it highlights that you should consider this point because this patient has this characteristic. Why would you not use that? That is transformative. In education, as I said mentioned, now I feel confident learning about anything, and it can essentially present content for learning that is curated for anyone. If someone wants to learn things in a tone, in a very strong tone, or a very passive tone, or a very summarized tone, it can curate content that you like to learn with. It can also give you explanations in the level that you feel comfortable with. Like I said, I often ask explanations in the level of a high school student because I don't know about that topic. So it has massive implications for education because these are things that often humans cannot present information that way. What about in finance? You can train a model on the way let's say social media and then financial trends to predict stock prices and also how trading works. It can have massive implications with real-time model training, which is very expensive but doable. Finally, beyond text, all we've seen right now is with text, but what about media such as image, video, and personal assistants? Imagine getting a live recipe recommendation based on your items that you have in the fridge. If you have a camera and it knows what is in your fridge, it can tell you that today you can make this or this and that. That would be amazing. So text is also only the beginning, and learning these generative models can also understand other things, other forms of media as well. Finally, I should talk about what Google is doing on generative AI, because today I've been showing you presentations with ChatGPT, which is not by Google. So Google has a very different stance on generative AI. It's centered on something called AI principles. There are 7 principles, but summary of them is responsible, reliable, secure data, and so that AI models cannot produce harm to users. And there are many things. That's why they're slow in deploying their models. And they have a lot of potential to cause harm and misinformation. But there's lots of plans. I can tell you this much, that Google is going through a huge transformation right now in every possible way to be ready for AI. Google Bard will be made available to everyone by later this year. Next 23 is happening in May when it will be released. Platform for innovation. The vision is that everyone should be able to use AI to innovate in whatever way they want, and they don't need to be an AI practitioner or whatever to do it. So allow anyone to innovate using AI with upcoming easy to use tools and software. That is also some things that are coming up. They're also the pioneers of generative AI in research and development with unmatched data and computational capacity. So that's something that is one of the biggest resources that they have that I feel proud to be able to work with in such technologies. And finally, it is focused on cloud-enabled AI solutions to meet computational demands. I don't want to talk more about cloud computing, but it is, maybe you know a bit more about it, but it's basically computing hosted in cloud solutions so that it can scale across regions, across any demand necessary, and using software as a service tools. So instead of running these models in your local computers, they'll be running in the cloud, and you can just use them with your accounts. And finally, how to prepare. This is the last slide, I promise. As I mentioned, we're still at the infancy, and it's important to understand that, because it might be tempting to think, okay, we are here, and then I should rush into doing things. I think it's important to understand and take it slow and do the right things. It is important to have understanding of this technology and artificial intelligence in general. Most experts believe that Gen AI will fuel the popularity of other AI ML technologies. Like I said, Gen AI is just the newest thing, but that made it accessible to everyone. But there's also the past 20 years of research that now will become more accessible. Learning and adapt. I think this is the two most important thing. It's important more than ever to learn how to use this technology. Gen AI makes it approachable to non-technical users, so sky is the limit for creativity. Adapt. This will definitely impact many job fields, so it's important to adapt for everyone. At least near term, AI will play an assistive role in professions, helping us to do more. For example, in the case of narrative writing or coding or anything, or emails, is being our assistant, right? It's not quite replacing us yet. So it's important to use these tools. And finally, being responsible. It is important to be responsible with this powerful technology as society and regulations trail the industry. Being aware of abuse and exploitation is paramount. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much once again for coming. It was my pleasure. I'm happy to take any questions and talk. I'm here. And once again, thank you so much for coming. I hope you found it very exciting.
আশা করি সেশনটা ভালো লেগেছে। আমার খুব ভালো লেগেছে। বিশেষ করে প্রম্পট ইঞ্জিনিয়ারিং। আমরা যেটা জানি গুগল একটা কিছু জিজ্ঞেস করলে বলে দেয়। কিন্তু গুগলকে গাইড করার এই কনসেপ্টটা আসলে নাই, এক্সিস্ট করে না। সো এখানে যদি ওকে একটু ক্লু দেওয়া যায় যে অ্যাক্ট লাইক অ্যান এক্সপার্ট ইন দিস এরিয়া, সে ওইভাবে কাজ করে। তারপরে যদি কোনোটা না আসে তাহলে একটু ডান বাম করে বুঝিয়ে দিলে ও বুঝতে পারে। এই ব্যাপারটা মজা লেগেছে। সো আপনাদের সবাইকে অনেক ধন্যবাদ আগ্রহ নিয়ে শোনার জন্য। এটা আমাদের ক্যাম্পাস টিভিতে ব্রডকাস্টেড হয়েছে এবং এটা রেকর্ডিং ভার্সন আমরা ইমেইল করে দেব সবাইকে, যদি আপনারা বা আপনাদের বন্ধুরা এটা শেয়ার করতে চান। আর এটার কোনো অংশ কোনো ক্লিপস করে কোনো সেশনে দেয়া যাবে না। উনি যেহেতু গুগলে কাজ করেন, বড় বড় কোম্পানিগুলির কিছু রেস্ট্রিকশন থাকে যেটা ইউটিউবে রেফারেন্স হিসেবে বা কোনো জায়গাতে ইউজ না করার জন্য। এটা একটা আনঅফিশিয়াল প্রোগ্রাম। মেইন উদ্দেশ্য হচ্ছে যে আমরা কি হচ্ছে, কোন দিকে যাচ্ছে এটা জানার একটা ধারণা। সো আমরা সবাই ধন্যবাদ জানাতে চাই আমাদের দীপকে, যে সময় করার জন্য, কষ্ট করে এতদূর আসার জন্য এবং এই সময়টা উপভোগ্য করার জন্য। আমি এখন আমাদের দুজন প্রফেসর আছেন, তাদেরকে অনুরোধ করব একটু কাইন্ডলি এখানে আসেন। আমরা আমাদের একটা ছোট্ট সুভেনির গিফট করতে চাই। একটু যদি স্যারদের হাতে দিয়ে দাও। একটু মাঝে আসো প্লিজ। স্যার আপনারা দুজনেই দেন। থ্যাংক ইউ। এর সাথে আমাদের প্রোগ্রাম শেষ হচ্ছে। সবাইকে অনেক